Good morning, colleagues. Today we need to decide what we are going to do with our beautiful Komi Republic. Any suggestions? Yes, Comrade Zhdanov.
Let's launch a man into a space.
Andrei, we don't have rockets.
Let's use communist catapult.
Any other suggestions? What, Comrade Gumilyov? Should we form an alliance with Mongolia? Why?
Because we are Eurasian brothers.
I don't know. What did you say, Comrade Suslov? Do you want to engage in bootlegging in Central England? I'm just kidding. You're not Thomas Shelby. Can someone suggest something worthwhile?
Mr. Serov and I suggest killing all the Jews.
Okay, that's enough. This meeting is over. So, the Komi Republic. I deliberately ended this part before Komi because only this country can take up an entire episode, thanks to its leaders. Let's briefly run through all the possible rulers of this republic. In the left corner of the ring, Zhdanov, Bukharina and Suslov awaits us. Let's start with Zhdanov. Andrei Alexandrovich, from early childhood, thanks to his father, became acquainted with the ideas of Bolshevism. When the revolution came, he supported Lenin in word, but not in deed. In general, he was an agitator, editor and publisher of red newspapers. So he was basically the Jonah Jameson of the USSR. Let's listen to his stupid voice.
Просит вас довести о настоящем во сведения Верховного Совета Союза Советских Социалистических Республик. Председатель Совета народных комиссаров Союза СССР и Сталин.
At the same time, it can be said with certainty that Zhdanov was not an ideological communist, otherwise he would not have survived the 1930s. Andryusha always understood which way the wind was blowing in party affairs. That is why he is considered one of the main organizers and executors of the repressions in the USSR. His signatures, along with Stalin, Khrushchev, Molotov and Voroshilov, are under the lists of those to be shot. During the war, the rather obese Zhdanov did not lose weight at all, although he was defending Leningrad. Let me remind you that a million people died of hunger. All of animals were eaten. There were cases of cannibalism. By the way, my grandmother, may she rest in peace, was taken away on the road of life at the age of 5 in a state of complete physical exhaustion. And Zhdanov set the tables with caviar. Okay, forgive me, I got distracted. After the war, Andrei was even considered a Stalin's successor, but fate decreed otherwise. In 1948, he dies in a sanatorium, essentially due to a medical error. This is the end of the character. Rest in pepperoni.
Tomašel Vek, Mafia.
Mafia.
Sigma.
Next to the chopping block, Comrade Suslov, a party activist who began his career climb under Stalin. He became the country's ideologist after Zhdanov's death. Then he moved to Birmingham and started some crime operations. Oh man, I keep forgetting that he's the wrong guy. Okay, what were I saying? He participated in the overthrow of Khrushchev, and it was he who read the report criticizing Nikita in the day of his removal. Under Brezhnev, he held many important posts and was in charge of ideology, culture, censorship, and education. He adhered to orthodox Marxist views, trying to maintain stability without resorting to extremes, but persistently suppressed ideological opponents. It can be safely said that in 1970s in the USSR were exactly as Suslov had intended them to be. He died in 1982 and was buried near the Kremlin wall, which is, you know, very, very awesome. And now, girls, I decided to combine Bukharina and Stalina for one reason. They are in this modification only because they were in close relationship with big party bigwigs. These women have very similar biographies because of their famous men. Both Bukharina and Stalina experienced many difficulties. Neither of them bore the last name that they had. in their modification until the end of their lives. Bukharina, that is Gurevich, was sent into exile after the execution of Nikolai Bukharin, then studied to be a historian and died in 2003. Svetlana Stalina, that is Alliluyeva, is interesting for several facts. Firstly, she had 5 husbands, which already characterizes a person. Secondly, in 1967, during a trip to India, she dropped everything and went to the USA, leaving her daughter and son in the USSR. She sent her second daughter, born in the USA, to a boarding school in 1982 and went to travel the world. In short, an unpleasant individual. Died in 2011. And now let's talk about the center, or rather about the remaining two, Voznesensky and Kosygin, in that order. Nikolai Voznesensky was also one of the Stalin's favorites. That is why his career growth will be very rapid. In the 1920s, Nikolai studied at various economic institutes in the faculty of the command economy. In the 1930s, he made a quick career because he was a close associate of Andrei Zhdanov. During the Great Patriotic War, he played a key role in organizing the military economy, relocating enterprises, and mobilizing resources. According to many historians, he did the bulk of the work in the government. Thanks to him, the USSR recovered relatively quickly after the World War. He was the head of the 4th five-year plan. In 1947, he was elected a candidate for membership in the Politburo of the Central Committee, was considered one of the most promising figures in the country's leadership. But everything changed with Zhdanov's death.
Farewell.
May you rest in peace.
Two centers of political power appear, Malenkov-Beria and the Leningraders, who worked under Zhdanov in the political apparatus. In the 1949, he was accused of the Leningrad affair along with a number of other party workers. On October 1st, 1950, he was shot dead. Congratulations, you made it around the half of the video. If you like this video, leave a like, subscribe and so on. And if you don't like the video, type in the comments why you don't like this video. A man who can be called the unexecuted Voznesensky. Alexei Kosygin. The beginning of his biography is exactly the same. An economic education, appointment to the first responsible position under Zhdanov's patronage, serious work during the war. By the way, Kosygin was the organizer of the Road of Life, which saved thousands of people from the siege of the Leningrad. After the war, Kosygin showed enough intelligence not to join any political groups. By the 1960s, the USSR economy was under Kosygin's constant control. He showed himself very well in this post. The 8th five-year plan of 66 to 70, which passed under the sign of Kosygin's economic reforms, became the most successful in Soviet history and was called Golden. To summarize, imagine a factory in a command economy. Before the Kosygin reform, it was chasing planned indicators which were constantly growing. Now factories are switching to business accounting. It no longer matters how much a factory produces. What matters is whether it brings in income. Thanks to the reforms of Alexei Nikolaevich, the USSR came a little closer to the capitalist countries in terms of quality of life and prosperity. Kosygin understood the approaching crisis of the Soviet economy, but he could not do anything, because in 1979 he was the only one from the Politburo who did not support declaring war on Afghanistan, for which he was effectively removed from the real state activity. He died in 1980. What a Chad man. Igor Rostislavovich Shafarevich, our own Bobby Fischer. Let's start with him since there is not much information. He graduated from the mathematics department of Moscow State University and made a significant contribution to science. His works on field theory, algebraic surfaces, and arithmetic geometry have become classics. But that's not what we're here for. Since the late 70s, he had been actively involved in the dissident movement, publishing philosophical and political articles. His book Russophobia, 1982, has received the greatest fame. In it, Shafarevich claims that the Jews are to blame for everything, and the murder of the Romanov family in 1919 was ritual. The funniest thing is that we can easily trace the roots of these views. In the video on Kaiser Redux, I talked about how the murder of the Romanovs by the Bolsheviks was investigated. This investigation was carried out by Michael Dieterichs, an absolute anti-Semite. So I think that Shafarevich's views like this appeared after reading this book. Igor Rostislavich died in 2017. Ivan Serov was a Soviet military leader, statesman and party leader, one of the key leaders of the state security and intelligence agencies of the USSR. In the 1930s, he joined Beria's team and began working in the field of internal affairs. He was not involved in the mass repressions of the late 30s, since he only began his work in 1939. But he was the organizer of mass deportations during the Great Patriotic War. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of people here. Volga Germans, Crimean Tatars, nationalities of the Caucasus, Greeks, Turks, and many others. It seems to me that this is why he was made a Russian nationalist in the modification. He took part in the capture of Berlin, for which he was awarded the Hero of the Soviet Union. These are the kind of heroes we have. After the war, he was one of the few leaders of the Ministry of Internal Affairs who was involved in the operation to arrest Beria. He became friends with Khrushchev on this basis. Also, he suppressed the Hungarian uprising. But already in 1963, he was removed from all posts and deprived of all titles. He died in 1990, and to sum it up, here is a quote from Amayak Kabulov, his colleague in the Ministry of Internal Affairs.
Hey buddy, I think you got the wrong door. The leather club's 2 blocks down.
Okay, here we go. Lev Gumilyov, ladies and gentlemen. A man who had a very hard time under the Bolsheviks. Let's figure out his biography. Lev's parents are the poet Nikolai Gumilyov and the poetess Anna Akhmatova. So that you understand the scale of these personalities, they are studied in Russian schools. The Gumilyov family's problems began in the 20s. Lev's father hated the Bolsheviks and criticized them at every opportunity. As a result of this activity, Nikolai Gumilyov was shot in 1921. At school, as you understand, the son of the counter-revolutionary was not liked either. After school, he tried to enter the university, but because of his noble origins, he was rejected. Since there was nothing else to do, he began to sign up for various expeditions to Central Asia, to Caucasus, to excavations of Khazar cities. In 1934, he entered the Leningrad University, the history department. But he won't be allowed to finish his studies. In 1938, his third arrest ends with a camp sentence. The place of imprisonment will be the Turukhansk region, where Stalin himself was once imprisoned. In 1944, he went to the front. There, he would show heroism and will be awarded several medals. After the war, he is reinstated at the university. In 1948, he became a doctor of history, but already in 1949, Zhdanov and the NKVD fabricated a new case. Gumilyov goes to camp again for 7 long years. Then Gumilyov is again reinstated at the university, publishes many works, and comes up with the theory of passionarity. In very simple terms, we take the concept of ethnos, add Vernadsky's biosphere, and in the end we string it on a Maslow's pyramid. It turns out that some people were subject to impulses of passionarity, which is why they began to seize everything or build mega empires. A simple example. A solar flare occurs, which affects some residents of the Russian Empire at the beginning of the 20th century, and they organize a revolution. I like passionality, but I cannot agree with it. It is all too crudely mixed together. In any case, it is a very interesting thing. The scientific community, however, the USSR and the world, also did not appreciate this theory, often calling it pseudo-scientific. It is important to say that Gumilyov identified 7 ethnic groups, considered all of Eurasia to be one people. To be honest, the idea of Eurasianism is still quite alive in Russian public thought. Gumilyov died in 1992, but his work lives on. And now the cherry on top, Sergei Taboritsky, the most odious character of the Komi Republic, but I have to disappoint you, his biography is quite standard. He was born at the end of the 19th century in a Jewish family, which is pretty funny. He can be considered a turbo Jew, because both his father and mother were Jews. What he did before the revolution of 1917 is unknown. According to him, he was in the Wild Division, fought on the fronts of the First World War. There is no confirmation of these facts. After the revolution, he, along with the German garrison, leaves Kiev and settles in Munich. By this time, Taboritsky was a convinced monarchist and anti-communist. He participated in the emerging Nazi movement in Germany and was an active popularizer of Black Hundred's anti-Semitic ideas. In 1922, he organized an assassination attempt on Pavel Milyukov, one of the former ministers of the provisional government, but everything did not go according to plan. Vladimir Nabokov, the father of the writer Nabokov who wrote Lolita, shielded Milyukov and was killed on the spot. For this, Taboritsky was imprisoned for 5 years. In 1927, he was released under an amnesty. In prison, he was also diagnosed with syphilis. Then, for 10 years, he tried to obtain German citizenship. With each new attempt, he Germanized his family tree more and more. By the 4th attempt, all of his grandfathers were Germans. Why then, in 1937, was he finally recognized as a purebred Aryan? And not just anyone recognized him, but the head of the secret police, Heinrich Müller, himself. All of it because in 1936 he became deputy head of the Office of Russian Immigration. This organization was controlled by the SS with the purpose of monitoring Russian immigrants. 40 to 50,000 people. In fact, Taboritsky was the eye of the Gestapo among the Russian immigration, thus it received information about unreliable Russians firsthand. He was also involved in supplying Russian translators to the Wehrmacht. In total, up to 1,000 white emigres got to the German-Soviet front through this channel. But this was not the only way to find employment. He also recruited for the Gestapo. At the end of the war, he escaped from Berlin and settled in Hesse. He died there in 1980. As you can see, there's nothing supernatural in his biography. In the modification, he is much cooler, well, I mean, more interesting. The final part of this video, where should we put Komi in our tier list? I think it's a well-deserved S tier. Hey you, thank you for watching this video. We'll see you in the next episode.